You are not who you think you are. The universe is not what you believe it to be. And every answer you've ever accepted was shaped by the terrifying absence of one. The lie of linear time, as you understand it, is not a river. It is not even a thread. It is a fabrication stitched into your brain through evolutionary necessity, not objective truth. You wake up, you work, you age, you die. The arrow seems to point forward because you've never known what it means for. An arrow to bend. But what if the arrow was never there? Einstein called time an illusion, albeit a persistent one. But this wasn't metaphor. It was the direct result of the special theory of relativity, which revealed that time is elastic, warped by gravity and speed. A man traveling at near light speed would age slower than his twin who stayed on Earth. Not metaphorically, literally. One brother grows old. The other remains young. Same biology, different chronology. The implication is as clear as it is ignored. Time does not move at the same rate for everyone, and therefore cannot be the universal ruler we believe it to be. What you call now is not what someone else, in a different gravitational field or moving at a different velocity, would call now. There is no singular, objective present. There never was. The moment you think you're living in, it depends entirely on where and how you're at. So what does this say about your memories? About your future? If now is not fixed, then neither is your past. And if your past isn't fixed, then who exactly are you? Your memories are electrical. Impulse is fragile, mutable. The hippocampus doesn't store them like a computer hard drive. It recreates them. Every time you recall an event, you corrupt it. The very act of remembering is the act of rewriting. You never really recall the original moment. You recall your last memory of recalling it. A photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. Eventually, the faces smudge, the details blur, and yet you still say, I remember. Do you? History suffers the same fate. We say that history repeats itself, but history doesn't repeat. It rhymes with a tone you don't recognize, over and over, until you mistake it for melody. But whose history? Whose story? The victors write it. The colonizers record it. The powerful preserve what flatters them and burn what does not. You were told time is a straight line, but you live inside loops of propaganda, nested inside centuries of cognitive bias. Recursive illusions passed off as knowledge. Consider the phenomenon of déjà vu, that eerie sense you've been here before. Studies suggest it might be the brain processing present information slightly out of sync-feeding perception to consciousness, milliseconds before cognition. But there's another possibility, that your mind unconsciously remembers the future just as easily as the past, and something buried in you simply slipped. Have you ever sensed what was about to happen, and then it did? Is that premonition, or a glitch in the neural simulation you call memory? And what about chronesthesia, the mind's ability to project itself into past or future? You can imagine your childhood. You can envision retirement. You are not trapped in the present moment the way you believe you are. You are time-traveling constantly psychologically, subjectively. But here's the paradox. The more you try to live in the moment, the more aware you become of time itself. The more you meditate to escape it, the more vividly you feel its erosion. Tick, tick. Now understand this. The second, law of thermodynamics, the universal drift toward entropy, is what gives you the illusion that time flows forward. It is not time creating entropy. It is entropy giving birth to the sense of time. But entropy is decay, disorder, dying stars, melting ice, fading memories. If entropy ceased, time would stop. So what then? Are you really experiencing when you say a day has passed? You're not counting minutes. You're counting how much closer you are to dissolution. Without entropy, there is no change. Without change, no perception of time. So in a way, time isn't real. Only decay is dot, and if all motion is relative, if there is no absolute position in space, and therefore no absolute clock in time, then what does it mean to age? What does it mean to grow up or grow old? You could be 6 years old in one frame of reference and 60 in other. Age is not fixed. Neither are you dot, so what happens to morality when time unravels? Is a crime still a crime if it's committed in a different slice of the space-time loaf? Would it matter to you if your worst mistake had already been forgiven by a future that exists right now, but at a distance you can't yet reach? What if every version of you past, present, future exists simultaneously right now in a timeless block of space-time? And what you call your life is just the traversal of a flashlight beam across an already written book. Then free will becomes a page turn, and death just the final sentence. If time isn't real, then when exactly are you? The self that never was close your eyes. Point to yourself. Where did your finger go? Your chest? Your head? Somewhere near your thoughts, perhaps, but never your foot, or your liver, or your blood. You believe in a self, a center, a core identity that persists through time. But science, psychology, and introspection all agree, no such self exists. You are a process. Let's begin with a question so simple it becomes fatal. What is you? Is it your body? Your body replaces nearly all its cells every 7 years. Your skin is entirely new every month. Your bones regenerate. Your blood recycles. Your brain rewires itself every time you learn. The atoms that made you 10 years ago are now part of someone else or some other thing. You are a river of flesh pretending to be a statue dot. Is it your memories then? We've already established they are unreliable. The false memory effect, well, documented by Elizabeth Loftus and others demonstrates how easily your mind can be tricked into fabricating entire events, people, and places. You can remember crimes you didn't commit, loves you never had, pain you never felt. All it takes is the right context, the right nudge. So if your self is rooted in memory, and memory is corrupted, what does that say about you? The Ship of Theseus asks, if every plank of a ship is replaced, piece by piece, until nothing original remains, is it still the same ship? Now apply that to your body, to your thoughts, to your identity. Are you the same person who fell in love 5 years ago? The same person who made a terrible mistake in childhood? If not, why do you hold that person responsible? Why do you still call them you? Neuroscience offers no location for the self. There is no single region in the brain where you reside, no throne for which consciousness rules. The brain is a web of feedback loops, firing patterns, and silent processes you can't even access. You are not the CEO. You are not the pilot. You are the story being told to justify decisions already made in darkness. Not your thoughts. They arrive, unbidden. Try to predict your next one. Try to stop thinking. You can't, not fully. The voice in your head is not you. It's just a narrator trying to make sense of decisions already made by machinery beneath your awareness. Libet's experiments in the 1980s revealed something deeply disturbing. The brain signals for movement begin before we become consciously aware of deciding. You think you've made a choice, but your neurons made it for you, milliseconds before you were let in on the illusion dot. So what is free will then? A delayed broadcast. A commentator describing the play after it's already happened. And still, you say, I chose. But who is this I that chose? Eastern philosophies saw through this illusion long ago. Buddhism teaches anat non-self. The self is not an essence, but a pattern. A flame dancing on oil, not the oil itself. A whirlpool in a river, not a fixed thing. Western science, thousands of years later, confirms it. The self is not a noun. It's a verb, but you've spent your life protecting this phantom. You decorate it, you defend it, you grieve it. You say things like, finding myself, losing myself, being true to myself, as though there is a solid reference point to be found. Their I ascends single quotes T. It gets worse. Split brain patients, those whose corpus callosum has been severed, expose the mind as a divided parliament. The two hemispheres act independently, develop conflicting desires, even contradict each other. One patient's left hand tried to slap away the right hand's work. Another tried to undo what the other half of the brain was doing, like two people in one skull. If your brain can disagree with itself, which part is you? The illusion of unity is maintained only because your brain lies to you. It creates a cohesive narrative post factum, editing out the conflicts, smoothing the fractures. Like a film editor hiding jump cuts to preserve the illusion of continuity. And still you say, I. But if there is no fixed self, what sins can be forgiven? What trauma can be healed? What does it mean to love or to be loved if the one being loved is constantly dissolving? In psychology, the default mode network, DMN, is the brain region most active when you are thinking about yourself. It's what lights up when you daydream, reflect, worry, regret. But inexperienced meditators and under the influence of psychedelics like psilocybin and LSD, the DMN shuts down. And when it does, something astonishing happens. The self disappears. Not metaphorically, subjectively, experientially. People report feeling like they've died, or that they were never real to begin with. They describe it as bliss. But you should not, because it means that your normal state, what you call me, is a hallucination your brain works constantly to maintain. A defense against the void. A fiction polished daily, not because it's true, but because without it, you would disintegrate. So who is speaking right now? Who is listening? Who is suffering? Who is dreaming? If the self is an illusion, who exactly is asking that question? The observer that cannot be found. You believe you are the observer. Not just a body, not just a story, but something deeper, the one who sees. You stand behind the eyes, don't you? Looking out at the world, watching thought arise and fall, feeling pain, pleasure, boredom. You are not your body, you have a body. You are not your thoughts, you have thoughts. So what is this you that stands apart from the world? Find it. Close your eyes and look inward. Search for the watcher. Don't settle for the voice narrating your experience. That's just thought in disguise. Go deeper. What's beneath? The voice? Who is hearing it? You'll find silence, a void, an empty room with mirrors for walls. The closer you get, the further it recedes. The philosopher David Hume tried this. He looked inward and found no self, just a bundle of perceptions, sensations, ideas coming and going. No core, no substance, just flickers. He called it the bundle theory of the self. Your identity, then, is just a cluster of things that happen to be happening. Not a container, just the contents. A basket with nothing underneath. Modern neuroscience agrees. The sense of being a unified observer is a construction. It arises from the brain's need to model the body in space, the attention mechanisms that track sensory input, and the recursive loops that allow thought to comment on itself. In other words, the observer is a process, not a person. You are being witnessed, but not by you. Thomas Metzinger, a German philosopher and neuroscientist, goes even further. There is no such thing as a self. Nobody ever had or was a self. He calls the self a transparent self-model, something the brain builds, and then forgets it built, like a magician hypnotizing himself. But let's suppose for a moment you are more than your mind, that your awareness is not just a function of the brain. Some traditions call it consciousness, others soul. But even here, you face a brick wall, the hard problem of consciousness. Coined by philosopher David Chalmers, the hard problem asks, how does subjective experience arise from physical matter? How does firing neurons give birth to the taste of chocolate, the color red, the ache of nostalgia? Why does anything feel like something? Science can track the correlates of consciousness. What parts of the brain light up when you think or feel or see? But correlation is not explanation. We know that damage to the visual cortex destroys vision, but that doesn't explain why photons bouncing off your retina give rise to a picture in your mind. The mystery only deepens when you realize no one has ever seen the world. Not directly. What you experience is Section 3. The observer that cannot be found. You believe you are the observer. Not just a body, not just a story, but something deeper, the one who sees. You stand behind the eyes, don't you? Looking out at the world, watching thought arise and fall, feeling pain, pleasure, boredom. You are not your body, you have a body. You are not your thoughts, you have thoughts. So what is this you that stands apart from the world? Find it. Close your eyes and look inward. Search for the watcher. Don't settle for the voice narrating your experience. That's just thought in disguise. Go deeper. What's beneath? The voice? Who is hearing it? You'll find silence, a void, an empty room with mirrors for walls. The closer you get, the further it recedes. The philosopher David Hume tried this. He looked inward and found no self, just a bundle of perceptions, sensations, ideas coming and going. No core, no substance, just flickers. He called it the bundle theory of the self. Your identity, then, is just a cluster of things that happen to be happening. Not a container, just the contents. A basket with nothing underneath. Modern neuroscience agrees. The sense of being a unified observer is a construction. It arises from the brain's need to model the body in space, the attention mechanisms that track sensory input, and the recursive loops that allow thought to comment on itself. In other words, the observer is a process, not a person. You are being witnessed, but not by you. Thomas Metzinger, a German philosopher and neuroscientist, goes even further. There is no such thing as a self. Nobody ever had or was a self. He calls the self a transparent self-model, something the brain builds, and then forgets it built, like a magician hypnotizing himself. But let's suppose for a moment you are more than your mind, that your awareness is not just a function of the brain. Some traditions call it consciousness, others soul. But even here, you face a brick wall, the hard problem of consciousness. Coined by philosopher David Chalmers, the hard problem asks, the collapse of causality. You were taught that events follow a chain, that one thing causes another, that every effect has a cause, and every cause leads to an effect. You believed that the world was a machine clockwork, predictable, logical. You trusted in this comfort because it promised that actions had meaning, that decisions shaped outcomes, that pain had purpose. But causality, your most fundamental belief about how the universe works, is not stable. It is a mirage, born from limited perception. A child's story told to keep you calm in the face of chaos. Let's start simple. You drop a glass and it shatters. Cause and effect. Gravity pulled it down. The floor resisted. The glass fractured. The sequence makes sense. But at the quantum level, sense is treason. Particles do not behave in causal sequences. They exist in superpositions clouds of possibility until observed. They do not fall from one event into the next like dominoes. They collapse into outcomes, not because something caused it, but because the act of measurement forced a choice. Quantum entanglement drives the knife deeper. Two particles can become linked such that the state of one instantly determines the state of the other, regardless of distance. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. It violates locality. It violates your concept of cause, following effect through time. When one particle changes, the other changes immediately. No signal, no transmission, no. In dash between dot, if something happens here, and it instantly affects something across the universe, where is the cause? Where is the sequence? Where is the story? Worse still, the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment dot. In this mind-warping setup, a particle passes through a double slit and creates a pattern either wave-like or particle-like. But here's the twist. Whether or not it behaves like a wave is determined after it has already passed through the slit. A decision made in the present appears to rewrite what happened in the past. Did you hear that? A choice made now alters an event that has already occurred. This is not science fiction. This is verified experiment, peer-reviewed, repeatable. The universe does not care about your arrow of time dot. This shakes the foundation of every morality, every legal system, every belief about consequence. If time is flexible and causes are smeared across past and present, then responsibility becomes a ghost, and you say, I chose to act. But your choice may already be encoded in your brain before you're aware of it, as shown in Benjamin Libet's experiments. Your consciousness only arrives after the decision is made. Your mind rushes to explain why it chose it, but the act itself came from elsewhere. So was it really your decision? Your sense of agency is an afterthought, a hallucinated justification. And if cause and effect is unstable at the root, then how can you ever say that you made something happen? Determinism offers no comfort either. If the universe is entirely deterministic, then every action you take was set into motion at the Big Bang. You are always going to say what you're saying now, always going to feel what you're feeling now. There is no choice, just an illusion of one crafted by neural machinery, wired to give you the feeling of control. But randomness is no better. If the universe is not deterministic, but ruled by chance, then your choices don't matter either. They're not yours. They're accidents. Collisions of particles you don't control, cascading through a system you can't predict. You are left with a binary choice that is not a choice. You are either a machine pretending to be free or a roulette wheel pretending to be meaningful. Causal logic breaks further in the face of retrocausality, the hypothesis that effects can influence their causes. Physicist John Cramer's transactional interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that particles exchange signals backward and forward in time, locking in outcomes through handshake agreements across temporal dimensions. You are reading this sentence now, but the atoms in your eyes were already entangled with the idea before you chose to look. The meaning was waiting for you, like a spider already perched on its web. Did you walk into it by accident, or was it spun for you? Even classical causality isn't safe. Chaos theory teaches us that small changes in initial conditions can produce wildly divergent outcomes. The butterfly effect isn't just poetic, it's mathematical. A flap of wings in Brazil can trigger a tornado in Texas, a breath, a blink, a neuron that fired instead of fizzling can reshape your entire life. But because the system is too complex to calculate, it gives the illusion of randomness. It hides the strings. You think you're making choices, but you're only watching a storm dot. So what about your regrets? If everything you've ever done was either predetermined, random, or quantumly ambiguous, how can you carry guilt? How can you forgive? How can you believe anyone deserves anything at all? What does it even mean to say, "This happened because," when the arrow of cause is as fake as the clock you built to track it? If every effect is already entangled with its cause, and if the past bends to the weight of observation, then which came first, the fall or the guilt? The death of meaning, you've clung to meaning like a lifeline. Every philosophy, every religion, every late-night walk under the stars has circled this hunger. You've asked, why am I here? What is my purpose? You are told to look inward, to create your own meaning, that life is a canvas, and you are the painter. But what if there is no canvas? What if your search for meaning is the final reflex of a mind unable to accept that none was ever there? Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist, built an entire school of thought logotherapy on the idea that humans are driven by the will to meaning, that even in the depths of suffering, meaning can be found. But even Frankl admitted, the meaning must be chosen, not discovered. It must be invented, and invention implies fiction. The universe is indifferent, not cruel, not kind, just blank. It does not see you. It does not notice you. It did not design you. Evolution has no goal. It did not sculpt you for joy or wisdom or peace. It sculpted you for survival, for reproduction, for adaptation. Every part of you that searches for purpose was molded by blind, unconscious pressures that had nothing to do with truth and everything to do with not dying. You find meaning in music, but sound is just pressure waves in air, interpreted by eardrums and processed by a brain evolved to detect patterns. You find meaning in love, but love is oxytocin, dopamine, mirror neurons firing. You find meaning in art, in poetry, in death. But these are just hallucinations stacked on top of hallucinations. Rituals built to keep terror at bay. Look at the stars. They shine for no one. They explode in silence. They live and die over billions of years, never once aware of your questions. The galaxies you see are ghosts light that left before your ancestors stood upright. You say, how beautiful. But beauty is a human construct. The universe isn't beautiful. It's just vast. It's just violent, you say. Life is precious. But that's because it ends. That's because it hurts. That's because without pain, you wouldn't have noticed it at all. ABSURDISM, as defined by Albert Camus, accepts this contradiction, that humans desperately seek meaning in a world that offers none. Camus said we must imagine Sisyphus happy as he pushes his rock up the hill forever, knowing it will roll back down again and again. But even Camus offered a kind of comfort. You are offered none here, because meaning is a loop. You believe in value. So you create goals. Those goals produce feelings. Those feelings reinforce the belief in value. But value is subjective. And subjectivity is trapped inside a brain evolved to hallucinate stability in chaos. Your sense of purpose is a dream that feeds itself. Even language, the tool you use to ask these questions, undermines you. Words are symbols. Symbols refer to other symbols. No word contains inherent meaning. Meaning only emerges from reference, and reference is a hall of mirrors. Try to define truth without using circular logic. Try to explain meaning without invoking something else that also needs to be defined. You can't. You are locked inside a recursive prison where every answer points to another question, and every question loops back to the need for meaning. But meaning is not a destination. It's a placeholder. It exists only to silence the screen. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But he also said, God is dead. He wasn't celebrating. He was mourning. Because once you kill the ultimate source of meaning, be it God, destiny, nature, you are left with responsibility, with choice, with weight. And most cannot bear It dots so they build new gods, new ideologies, new illusions. They call it progress. They call it legacy. They call it family, or justice, or truth. But underneath all of it is the same trembling, unanswered plea. Please let it matter. And when the final breath comes, and the chemicals dissipate, and the neurons fall silent, what remains? You are told your life was meaningful because someone remembers you, but their memory is decaying. You are told your love mattered because it changed someone, but they too will be gone. You are told humanity is evolving, but one day the sun will swallow the earth. The universe will dissolve into cold entropy. Nothing will be left, not even the idea that there once was something. And still you ask, what is the meaning of life? When meaning itself is just a way to avoid the silence? The mirror of others, you believe you are an individual, a unique consciousness. You say, I think, I feel, I believe, as though those thoughts, feelings, and beliefs originated from inside you, but they didn't. Look closely. Strip away what you've inherited from others, the language you speak, the clothes you wear, the values you uphold, the way you smile when someone greets you. What remains? Not self-dot, just sediment. You are not a mind contained in a body. You are a reflection assembled, piece by piece, from the fragments of everyone you've ever met. There is no you, apart from the network of interactions that shaped you. No thoughts are purely yours. No emotions untouched by the expectations of others. You are a mirror. Forgetting it reflects. Developmental psychology reveals this early. Infants have no stable self-image. They discover their identity in the gaze of others. The mirror stage, as defined by Lacan, is the moment a child sees itself and says me, but only by seeing itself, only by forming a feedback loop. Through recognition, even this I begins with an external frame. The philosopher George Herbert Mead takes it further. He argued that the self emerges from the social process. We learn to see ourselves through the eyes of others. We internalize their judgments. We anticipate their responses. We become what we think they think we are. You laugh at jokes others find funny. You feel shame because someone taught you what shame means. Even your rebellion is scripted. Rebelling against a norm is still obeying its structure. Consider the concept of identity, gender, nationality, profession, belief. All are social constructs, grids imposed on the formless chaos of being. You were handed a mask and told it was a face. You put it on so often, you forgot it wasn't skin. And yet, paradoxically, you crave authenticity. You say, I want to be myself. But how do you become what never existed? You consume media that tells you how to feel. Advertisements don't just sell products, they sell you yourself. Be unique just like everyone else. Your style, your speech, your online presence, it is all feedback. You post and you wait. You text and you watch for the typing bubble. You perform. And the applause or the silence shapes you. In prison, isolation is punishment. Deprivation of others collapses the self. Why? Because without others to reflect you, your identity begins to bleed. Solitary confinement causes hallucinations, breakdowns, identity confusion. It's not just loneliness, it's existential erosion. You vanish. Without a mirror, you are only visible when someone is watching. And what about morality? Do you act kindly because you are kind, or because someone might see? Would you be honest if there were no consequence? Would you be good if no one were watching? Studies show that people cheat less when there's a picture of eyes on the wall. Not even real eyes. Just the image of being seen is enough to invoke morality. This is not conscience. This is conditioning. You've internalized the gaze so deeply, you carry it with you. You are always being watched, even when you're alone. The voice in your head is not your own. It's an audience, a jury, an editor redlining your every impulse. And if your sense of self is defined by what others reflect back at you, then what happens when they're gone? When the friend leaves, when the parent dies, when the lover stops looking, you fracture. Because part of you was them. Their gaze sustained the outline of yourself. Now the outline collapses. You feel lost. But the truth is more devastating. You were never found to begin with doubt, so then what is grief? Not just loss, but the death of the version of you that existed only in their eyes. You were never whole. You were scattered across 100 reflections, 1,000 imagined perceptions. Every person who has ever loved you, hated you, ignored you, they each held a different version of you in their mind. None of them were true. But without them, who are you? When your identity is just the echo of other people's expectations, then who is left when the echo stops? The consciousness that shouldn't exist you are awake. That much, at least, you believe. You see, you hear, you feel. Sensory data floods in from the world, and somewhere behind it all, you experience. You don't just react, you know. You are reacting. You don't just think you are aware of thinking. You are conscious, and that is the most terrifying thing about you, because it should be impossible. Consciousness, as you know it, violates everything science understands about matter. Nothing in the periodic table suggests that a lump of carbon, nitrogen, and calcium should be able to feel sorrow or joy or guilt. Nothing in the laws of physics predicts that matter should wake up and start asking why. You are a biochemical error, a mistake that learned to suffer. The hard problem of consciousness, again and again, resists solution. We can map the brain. We can trace neural pathways. We can correlate activity with emotion, with decision-making, with memory. But none of that explains the simplest fact: why anything feels like something. Why does pain hurt? Why does red look red? Why is there something it is like to be you? Panpsychism offers one answer. Perhaps consciousness is not emergent, but fundamental. Perhaps everything has it, even electrons, even rocks. You recoil, but not because it's irrational. You recoil because it makes your experience meaningless. You are no longer special. You're screaming, you're loving, you're dreaming. They are not divine. They are just vibrations on the same spectrum that includes quarks and photons, integrated information. Theory suggests consciousness arises from the complexity of information patterns. But if so, your awareness is just the side effect of a machine humming, a ghost generated by syntax. You are nothing but structure echoing itself. Or worse, your consciousness is a hallucination. Daniel Dennett says there is no central experiencer. The self, the witness, the what it's like of being you. It's all just brain activity giving itself a user interface. Your pain, your love, your sadness, they're functional, not real. They help the organism survive. They create feedback, loops, but they do not imply an experiencer. You are a meat machine convinced it is awake. The illusion is so deep that even the illusion denies it's an illusion. And if consciousness is real, then it is perhaps the cruelest invention of evolution. Before consciousness, suffering was instinct. Reflex, a fish caught on a hook rides, but it does not reflect. An insect can be torn in half and still walk. But you can imagine death long before it comes. You can grieve futures that never existed. You can suffer from the idea of suffering. Your brain does not only process pain, it creates it, enhances it, replays it endlessly like a broken song. You were not built to be happy. You were built to be alert. To fear. To regret. To remember danger. To anticipate harm. Your consciousness is a threat detection system gone haywire. And still, people romanticize it They call it the soul. They say it separates us from animals, and it gives us morality, compassion, love. But animals love. Animals grieve. Elephants hold funerals. Crows remember faces. Dolphins recognize themselves in mirrors. So what is the advantage of your awareness? Just this: you can understand your own end. You can sit in silence and feel the weight of your inevitable death. You can write poems about the void. You can dream of things that will never happen and ache for them as though they were real. You are the only creature cursed with the ability to imagine happiness so vividly that its absence becomes unbearable. All of this for what? For genes to replicate? Consciousness was not part of the plan. Evolution did not intend you to ask questions, but you do, and that makes you dangerous. That makes you miserable, because you want meaning. You want peace. You want answers. But your consciousness was not designed to give them. It was designed to keep you alive long enough to breed, and then break. It is not a gift. It is a trap. So now you sit here, aware that you are aware, asking questions that have no answers, hoping to make sense of something that was never meant. To make sense, you were supposed to eat, flee, reproduce, and die. Instead, you fell in love. Instead, you wept at beauty. Instead, you looked into the dark and said, why? So tell me, if consciousness was never supposed to exist, then why do you suffer? For the sake of knowing that it does? The memory that lies you, trust your memory. You say, I was there. You say, I remember. You believe it anchors you, that it confirms your identity, your relationships, your past. But memory is not a recording. It is not a file, stored away in some neural cabinet, waiting to be replayed. It is an act of imagination, fragile, fluid, and corruptible. You don't retrieve memories, you reconstruct them. And every reconstruction alters the original. Each time you remember something, you overwrite it. Slightly, subtly, neurons rewire, associations shift. It feels the same, but it's not. It never is. You are remembering your last memory for remembering. This has been proven. Elizabeth Loftus, one of the most influential cognitive psychologists of the modern era, demonstrated that entire false memories can be implanted through suggestion. Participants remembered being lost in a mall as children, hugging Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, witnessing traumatic events that never occurred because someone told them it happened. Their brains created emotional responses. They cried. They shook. They relived what never was. You are just as vulnerable. Your most precious moments, your first kiss, your greatest shame, the day someone died, may be fictions your brain has rehearsed into truth. You have no way of knowing. Even flashbulb memories, the kind you swear are crystal clear, like where you were on 9/11s, or when you heard someone had died, are notoriously inaccurate. Studies show they degrade over time, even as confidence in their accuracy increases. You remember with conviction, but conviction is not truth. It is merely emotional certainty. And if memory is flawed, then so is identity. Because who are you without your memories? Amnesia patients lose chunks of their life names, faces, entire decades, and still function, still smile, still suffer. Clive Waring, a musician with profound amnesia, lives in a 30-second loop. Every moment feels like waking. For the first time, he writes, I am awake for the first time over and over, dozens of times a day. Yet he can play the piano. He can feel love. His wife walks in, and he weeps with joy every time, as if seeing her again after years apart. So what matters more, memory or emotion, action or recollection? If you can love someone but not remember them, what is love? If you can forget your crimes but still carry guilt, what is justice? And what happens when memory is stolen? Neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's dismantle identity piece by piece. First, recent memories vanish, then names, then the self. The body remains, smiling. But the soul, the person you knew, is gone. What did death look like before? The body died, and still you cling to memory. You build monuments to it. Photos, journals, tombstones, all desperate attempts to preserve what cannot be preserved. But even these fail. Photographs are frozen lies. Snapshots stripped of context, filtered by nostalgia. You remember how it felt, but not what it was. You see someone smile and forget the argument that came before. You see yourself laughing and forget how hollow it felt. And yet, you build your entire life on this. You punish others based on memories. You praise or blame yourself based on memories. You define your friendships, your trauma, your love, your rage on memories that may be no more accurate than a dream doc. So who are you, really? If your memory of pain can be erased, was the pain real? If someone forgets your betrayal, are you still a traitor? If the one who remembers you dies, do you disappear? Memory is not a foundation. It is a fog that pretends to be a mirror, and you are standing in it, trying to remember which way you came. The brain that builds reality don't see the world. You see a version of the world that your brain permits. You open your eyes and trust what appears before you. Trees, sky, faces, hands. You believe these things are there, outside of you, independent of you. But what you're experiencing is not the world. It is an interface, a simulation, a hallucination sculpted by a brain that evolved for survival, not truth. You are not perceiving reality. You are hallucinating it, consensually. Consider this. Your retina detects a fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. Your ears register only a narrow band of vibrations. Your fingers feel texture, but cannot perceive molecules. And yet, you build a coherent image of reality from this pitiful stream of signals. How? Your brain guesses. It fills in the gaps. It constructs. It imposes expectations onto raw data. What you think is seeing is actually predicting. A continuous hallucination updated by flickers of input. Anal Seth calls this controlled hallucination. The brain generates a model of the world and of your body within it, and only adjusts it when the data disagrees too much. You hallucinate a chair, and if the photons and shapes roughly match what your brain expects, it confirms, yes, this is a chair. If not, you override the data. You double check. You blink. You call it an illusion. But in truth, all of it is illusion. Only most of it is stable enough not to scare you. You never perceive reality as it is. You perceive what your nervous system allows. Just ask the mantis shrimp. It sees colors far beyond the human spectrum: ultraviolet, polarized light, multiple color receptors that reveal an alien world. To a mantis shrimp, your visual world is muted, false, cartoonish. What you call red is just an evolutionary guessa, convenience for finding ripe fruit or detecting blood. Your senses are not windows, they are filters. Your perception is not discovery. It is negotiation, a truce between what's outside and what your brain can handle. The same applies to sound. Your ears do not detect absolute pitch. They detect change, acceleration, vibration, like visual illusions. Auditory hallucinations are frequent and common, but you trust your senses because they mostly agree with others. Consensus is not proof. It is just a shared delusion. When everyone dreams the same dream, they call it reality. Even your sense of space is a construction. The you that feels centered behind your eyes is an illusion of spatial projection. Neuroscientist Olaf Blank found that electrical stimulation to the temporoparietal junction can induce Out-of-body experiences. Subjects feel themselves floating, sometimes watching their own body from above. You didn't leave your body. Your brain relocated you. So where are you really? Inside your body? Outside it? Both? The body itself is a hallucination. You don't feel your actual body, you feel a model of it. Phantom limb syndrome proves this. Amputees still feel pain, touch, even movement in limbs that are no longer there. The brain refuses to update the map. If the map of the body persists without the body, then what else persists without the world? Pain, too, can exist without injury. You can suffer without cause, feel heat without fire, cold without ice, touch without contact. The signals can be generated internally. Trauma, memory, dream, even reality itself breaks under close inspection. Quantum mechanics tells us that particles don't exist in defined positions until measured, that space and time are not continuous, that locality is not absolute. You think objects are solid, but atoms are 99.9999999% empty space. You never touch anything. The repulsion of electromagnetic fields between electrons gives the illusion of contact. The sensation of hardness is electrical resistance, not touch, not solidity. You are floating through a sea of probabilities, stitched together by expectation. Your reality is not built from matter. It is built from inference. And if the brain builds reality based on guesswork, then how can you ever say, this is real? If the red you see is not the red I see, if the pain you feel cannot be measured, if your self is just a body model layered on top of sensory prediction, then what is reality? Is it what we agree upon? Is it what remains when no one is looking? Or is it just a one hallucination wall mistake for home? The time that doesn't flow, you feel time moving. You feel it slipping through you, past, present, future. You say things like, time heals, time flies, I don't have time. You believe it flows, forward, always forward, but time doesn't move. You do. In physics, time is not a river. It is not a clock ticking. It is not a sequence of moments flowing one into the next. Time is a coordinate, just like width, height. Depth time is a dimension, and all dimensions are already there, permanent, immutable. Einstein shattered your illusion over a century ago. His theory of special relativity shows that time is not absolute. It bends, it stretches, it changes depending on speed and gravity. If you travel near the speed of light, time slows down for you, but not for those you leave behind. You could return from your journey, having aged a few days, while Earth has spun through decades. This is not a thought experiment. It is a real, testable phenomenon. GPS satellites have to correct for time dilation because their clocks tick faster in orbit than on the surface of Earth. If they didn't, your phone wouldn't know where you are. The flow of time depends on position, on motion, on gravity. So, what is now? Einstein called now an illusion. In a four-dimensional block universe, all events, past, present, future, already exist. The Big Bang is still there. The moment of your death is already fixed in space-time. The feeling of passing through time is your brain constructing a narrative based on memory and prediction. You are not moving through time. Your consciousness is sliding across a fixed surface, like a spotlight scanning a page that's already written. Your sense of becoming is fiction. This breaks everything. If the future already exists, then free will is dead. You cannot change what is already there. Your life is not unfolding. It is already unfolded. You are just catching up to the version of yourself that has already acted. You are not choosing. You are remembering. The twin paradox is not a paradox. One twin stays on Earth. One flies into space near light speed. When they reunite, one is older. Both are correct because their timelines are relative. Time is not a universal rhythm. It is local, subjective, and worse, it is malleable. You think of time as a line, but quantum physics sees it as entangled loops. Retrocausality suggests that effects can influence causes. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that the present can shape the past, that the act of measurement determines the outcome of a particle's history dot in the Wheeler's delayed choice experiment. A photon's behavior wave or particle is decided after it has already passed through a slit. The future rewrites the past dot, so how can you speak of before and after? How can you speak of cause and effect? Even your perception of duration is flawed. Neuroscience shows that time perception is elastic. When you are afraid, time slows down. When you are distracted, it vanishes. When you focus, it fragments. Time is not an external measure. It is an internal construct dot in deep meditation. Monks describe time as dissolving. In trauma, victims describe moments stretching infinitely. In dreams, entire lifetimes can be lived in seconds dot. So what is time? A ticking clock? A number on a calendar? A sequence of memories? All inadequate. You are a being stitched together by fragments of a timeline you didn't choose. You carry trauma as though it were present, joy as though it were lost. But the past is not behind you. The future is not ahead. They exist, equally real, equally unreachable. You think death is coming, but it's already here, waiting at the point it always was dot. So tell me, if time is already written, then why do you still believe? The language that traps you, you believe language is freedom, that it gives you the power to think, to share, to understand. You name things love, grief, justice, and believe naming gives you control. You speak to describe reality. You speak to connect, but language doesn't liberate. You dot it cages you. You do not speak language. Language speaks you. From the moment you learned to form words, the world was divided, not by nature, but by vocabulary. A baby sees a blur of shapes, colors, movement. Then someone says, tree. And that messy field of green and brown becomes a thing, a category, an object. The world collapses into labels, into syntax, into control. Language doesn't describe reality. It constructs it. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis proposed this long ago, that the structure of language shapes the structure of thought. A language without a future tense alters how its speakers perceive time. A language with many words for snow changes how snow is seen. Words don't just express experience. They limit it. Try thinking without language. You can't. Your inner voice speaks in words. Your dreams take on linguistic shape. Even your emotions are described before they are felt. You don't feel betrayal until your mind supplies the word. The label gives it form, gives it boundary. Without language, your feelings are only waves unformed, raw, unknowable. Wittgenstein wrote, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." You are not exploring thought with language. You are circling within it. Even truth becomes a victim. Language operates through metaphor. The heart is broken. Time is running out. Life is a journey. None of these are literally true, but your mind uses them anyway like prosthetics to stagger through abstraction. You say understand, meaning stand under. You say grasp, as if knowledge is an object to hold. But meaning is not physical dot, and yet you cannot. Think it without these fictions. Your entire self-concept is wrapped in pronouns. I, me, mine. What is I? A sound. A sound that points to what? To a body? To a collection of memories? To an illusion of continuity? The self is only real because language insists it is. Try removing the word I from your vocabulary. See what remains. You will find silence. And still, you trust language to save you, to find love, to resolve conflict, to understand the world. But words fail you. Always. They are abstractions, and abstraction means absence. You say tree, but not the wind in its branches. You say grief, but not the weight in the throat at 2 a.m. You say God, but not the silence that answers back. And what of truth? You believe in facts, in definitions, but every word depends on other words. Look in a dictionary and you will find a closed loop. Words defined by other words. A semantic prison with no foundation. You cannot escape the loop because your thoughts are made of it. You think in symbols, and symbols are not what they represent. A map is not the territory. The word fire does not burn. The phrase I love you does not prove love. And yet you build entire lives, entire cultures, entire identities on these sounds. You kill over them. You die for them. Language creates nations, religions, borders. It gives shape to ideologies that can't bleed, but cause bleeding. It makes real what should remain imaginary. You have mistaken the name for the thing, a menu for the meal. The symbol for the soul. So tell me, if every word is a wall between you and what is, then what's left when you finally shut up? The free will that never was. You make choices. You weigh options. You say, I decided. You believe this grants you freedom. But freedom is the most persistent illusion in your life. You are not free. You are not in control. You are not the author of your thoughts. Let's begin where the lie begins. With the feeling of intention. You feel like you choose what to do, what to eat, what to say, whom to love. But the feeling of making a decision comes after the decision has already been made. This is not poetry. This is experiment. In 1983, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet placed electrodes on subjects' heads and asked them to flex their wrists whenever they felt like it. Libet discovered something chilling. The brain showed signs of preparing to act hundreds of milliseconds before the subject reported the conscious decision to move. The brain acts, then the mind explains. You are the narrator, not the commander. Follow up. Studies confirmed this. Some showed readiness potentials seconds before a conscious decision. Your brain prepares your choices without asking you. Then, like a politician reading a teleprompter, you justify what's already been done. You do not choose your thoughts. They arrive. You do not choose your emotions. They rise. You do not choose your desires. They are given. Think carefully. Where do your thoughts come from? Do you summon them? Or do they appear unbidden like whispers behind a curtain you never lifted? Can you control the next word you'll think? Try. Wait. Watch. You can't. If you were truly free, you would have chosen your childhood. You would have chosen your genetics. You would have chosen not to be broken by trauma, but you didn't. And you see OULDN single quotes T. So where exactly do you believe this will comes from? Some say, I weigh evidence, I deliberate, I evaluate. But what shaped your values? What made you prefer one idea over another? What made one argument persuasive and another forgettable? Neuroscience says your past, your biology, your environment, every factor outside your control, and all those factors cascading through neurons, chemicals, childhood memories led you to decide. Determinism is not optional. The laws of physics do not pause for your preferences. Every atom in your brain follows physical law. Every ion, every synapse, every muscle twitch predictable in principle. If you had perfect knowledge of your brain, you could predict the next thing you would say. But you can't predict it because you are the prediction. You say, I could have done otherwise. But rewind the universe to the exact same state, and you will act the exact same way, again and again and again, because you are part of that state. And if the universe is not deterministic, if randomness exists, then your decisions are not free either. They are accidents, coin flips, random outcomes of a chaotic system. You are either a machine or a dice roll. No middle. No magic. No soul outside the physics. And still you punish yourself for decisions you made, for failures you chose. You feel guilt, regret, shame. But how can you blame the wind for knocking something over? And how can you blame yourself when your wind was someone else's storm? Morality begins to fracture here. Legal systems crumble. Justice turns to dust. How can you judge someone who could not have done otherwise? You can't. So we invent new illusions. Responsibility, rehabilitation, choice under pressure. We call it accountability, but it's just linguistic camouflage. You don't blame a tree for growing crooked. You don't blame the weather for raining. So why do you blame yourself for being what the universe made you? You were never choosing. You were always becoming. So answer this. If you are not free, then what exactly are you trying to forgive? The self that never existed. You say I, as if it means something solid. You say me, as if it points to a location. You believe there is a self behind your eyes, a pilot in your head, a steady core that watches, decides, endures. But the self is a story. And the story is false. There is no continuous you. Only the illusion of one. Cognitive science, neuroscience, and philosophy converge on this brutal truth. The self is not a thing. It is a process, a performance, a narrative held together by habit, memory, and linguistic convention. The brain's most elegant deception. The Buddhist concept of anatta, no self, predicted this long ago. It claimed that the self is not real, only the feeling of self, that you are not a soul or a spirit, but a bundle of momentary experiences, thoughts, sensations, intentions rising and vanishing like foam on a wave. Modern neuroscience agrees there is no single place in the brain where the self resides. No throne room, no center. Split brain patients, those whose corpus callosum has been severed, show that the left and right hemispheres can operate independently, even develop conflicting beliefs and desires. One hand buttons the shirt, the other unbuttons it. One eye sees an image and draws it. The other denies seeing anything at all. Which one is you? Michael Gatzzaniga, pioneer of split brain research, discovered that when the left brain doesn't know what the right brain saw, it still invents an explanation. The brain lies to itself convincingly. The interpreter module needs a story, so it creates one. Always, that's what the self is. A storyteller with no narrator. The self is post hoc, a reconstruction. Not the actor, but the editor. Try to find the self in real time. Meditate. Silence the internal monologue. Watch the thoughts arise. They come. They pass. They are not you. They just appear. Now ask, where is the thinker? There is only thinking. You feel like an observer. But who is observing? Is there a tiny homunculus inside your head watching the screen of your senses? That would require another observer inside that one, and another inside that one, an infinite regress. You are not the watcher. You are the watched. You are not behind the thoughts. You are the thoughts. The default mode network, a region of the brain associated with self-referential thought, becomes active when you daydream or reflect on yourself. It lights up during identity-based cognition. But when this network quiets through meditation, psychedelics, trauma, the self begins to dissolve. You don't die. You just lose the illusion of being a center. You become sensation without boundary. awareness without. Owner. This isn't mystical. It's mechanical. When psychedelics like psilocybin or LSD are introduced into the brain, the default mode network quiets dramatically. Users report ego death, loss of identity. Not a blackout, but a vivid, visceral experience of selflessness. Not, I am nothing, but there is no I. And the terrifying part, it feels more real than waking life. So why does the illusion of self exist at all? Because it's useful. It allows for long-term planning, social interaction, memory, integration. It gives the organism a functional continuity, a story to reference. Without it, the body might still breathe, eat, reproduce, but it couldn't navigate a complex social world. The self is a strategy, but you mistook the strategy. For substance. You built your life around this ghost, protecting it, feeding it, validating it. You built careers, relationships, reputations, all based on an I that doesn't exist outside of narrative. You fear death because you think something will end, but there was never something to begin with. Just thoughts and the illusion of a thinker. So now ask yourself, if there is no self, then who has been suffering all this time? The history that never happened. You think you know the past. You learned it in school, read it in books, heard it in stories, passed down like sacred scripture. You believe history is a record, an archive of what happened. The wars, the revolutions, the rise and fall of civilizations. But history is not what happened. It's what was written down. And more often than not, it was written by the liar who survived. The past is not truth. It is narrative, and narratives lie. Begin here. How do you know anything from the past is real? You weren't there. You rely on records, documents, letters, official accounts. But these are selections, curated, edited, redacted. Every historical document is a product of bias, omission, translation, interpretation. Every textbook is propaganda. The Holocaust happened, but it was denied. Entire governments have erased genocides. The Rwandan genocide, the Armenian genocide, the Great Famine of Ukraine under Stalin denied, buried, reframed. Truth is fragile. It bends under pressure, under time, under silence. So you learn a history not of facts, but of power. Who controls? The present controls the past. This is not fiction. This is Orwell, but it is also real. Textbooks in one country glorify a hero. In another, the same figure is a war criminal. One child learns of manifest destiny. Another learns of genocide. One sees the American Revolution as noble resistance. Another sees it as colonial infighting. Both are history. Neither is complete. All are distorted. Even dates deceive. The calendar you live by is arbitrary, chosen, imposed. There is no universal time. The year is not 2025. It's only 2025 according to a religious frame centered on a birth. That might not have happened when they say it did. Before that, the Julian calendar. Before that, lunar calendars. Each one erasing and rewriting time to suit the ruling order. Even the maps you studied are lies. Mercator projections distort size, making Europe larger, Africa smaller. A trick of scale reinforcing colonial dominance. You never saw the world. You saw what those in power wanted you to believe about it. And still, you build your identity on this. You say, my country, my people, my ancestors. But who told you who they were? You carry pride for actions you never committed, shame for events you never witnessed. You inherit meaning from events you cannot verify. Why? Because it gives you a story. And stories, unlike facts, endure. Even memory or personal history is shaped by narrative. You remember your life the way historians remember wars. Inaccurately, but coherently. You remove contradictions. You highlight trauma. You erase the parts that don't make sense. You become a myth of yourself. The same way nations become myths, the same way religions become myths, the same way truth becomes myth. And what of the histories that were never written? The voices never heard, the civilizations erased, the cultures exterminated before they could be recorded. History is not just what was preserved, it's what was allowed to be preserved. You live in the ruins of stories told by victors. Your identity is forged from the echoes of conquest. So what is history, really? Not what happened, but what was remembered. And not even remembered, but chosen to be remembered. So tell me, if all your memory of the world is just the curated echo of someone else's agenda, then how will you ever know what really was? The morality that eats itself. You think you know good and evil. You feel it in your bones. A moral compass. An internal light that tells you what is right, what is wrong. You trust it, like a sixth sense, intuitive, sacred, self-evident. Morality is not a compass, it is a mirror held up by your culture, your biology, your fear, and it cracks the moment you stare too long. Ask yourself, where does morality come from? Religion? Then which one? Each faith condemns the other. Gods contradict. Sacred texts oppose. One's martyr is another's heretic. Is it reason? Logic? Then explain why the same philosophers who defined virtue also own slaves. Why the Enlightenment, the age of rational ethics, justified genocide in the name of civilization. Is it evolution? Yes, morality evolved, but not for truth. Not for justice. It evolved to preserve the tribe. Altruism is a survival strategy. Kindness increases cohesion. Empathy protects offspring. Morality did not come from heaven. It came from the lizard brain, from chemical reinforcement loops and limbic resonance. We call it right because it worked. But morality is context-dependent. Behavior you find horrific in one, society is sacred in another. Cannibalism, polygamy, child sacrifice, blood feuds. Suicide pacts. All were, in their time and place, not just accepted but righteous. The trolley problem exposes your instability. Would you kill one person to save 5? Most say yes. Then what if that one person is your mother, your child, your lover? Then what if it's not 5 lives, but 5 criminals? Then what if the one life is innocent, and the 5 are guilty? You twist. You contort. There is no universal answer-only preference masked as ethics. And yet, you judge. You walk through the world armed with invisible law, condemning others for what you would do under different conditions. You tell yourself, I would never. But you would. History proves this. Ordinary people ran the gas chambers. Ordinary people tortured prisoners. Ordinary people signed orders that starved millions. Not monsters, not outliers. Humans, people like you. In the Milgram experiment, participants were told to administer electric shocks to a stranger. Most did, even as the stranger screamed, even when they begged, even when silence followed. Why? Because an authority figure told them to. Obedience overrode morality. In the Stanford prison experiment, students played the roles of guards and prisoners. Within days, the guards became sadistic, abusive, violent. The simulation collapsed. The line between role and self disintegrated. That put anyone in the right or wrong conditions. And the saint becomes the tyrant. So who are you judging? Exactly. Your morality is reactive. Situational. You believe in forgiveness until you're betrayed. You believe in justice until it's your child who is guilty. You believe in kindness until someone takes what you love. And then the rules shift. Tell yourself you are good, but goodness too is a story. You are kind to strangers so you can feel worthy. You give so you can be seen giving. You help because someone once helped you and you're afraid to break the chain. Your morality is self-preservationist in ethics, and when it fails, you don't blame the framework. You blame the world. You say it's corrupt, fallen, broken. You never say, perhaps morality was never real to begin with. But now, maybe you should. If good and evil change with time, with culture, with circumstance, if they fracture under scrutiny, bend under emotion, disappear under fear, then what are you really standing on when you say, this is right? The death that already happened to you, fear death. Not because it is unknown, but because you know too much. You've seen corpses. You've buried names. You've whispered prayers over hollow skin. You've watched the eyes of someone you loved become nothing. You say death is coming, but death is not a future event, that it is a process already in motion, right now. As you read this, 300 million of your cells are dying. Your brain is shrinking. Your telomeres, the tips of your DNA, are fraying like burned ropes. Entropy is unraveling your existence in slow, deliberate silence. Your death is not a surprise, waiting around the corner. It is a slow disintegration you mistake for aging. Biologically, death begins long before you stop breathing. Cells falter, proteins misfold, synapses misfire, the body forgets how to be itself, begin to dissolve. This slow erasure is not a malfunction. It is the design. But maybe you believe something will remain. A soul, perhaps an echo, a memory. But what is a soul if not a continuation of the self? And what is the self, as you've now seen, but a hallucination? If your I is an illusion, then what exactly survives? Your body will rot. Your memories will vanish. Your name will be spoken less and less until it disappears entirely. You might believe that your actions echo through others, that your kindness ripples forward. But how many names do you remember from a century ago? 1,000 years? Who were your great-grandparents? They loved, they wept, they dreamed of being remembered. Now they are dust without identity. Are them. And one day, someone will be you, alive and unaware you ever existed. The death you fear already happened in layers. The person you were 10 years ago is gone. Different cells, different beliefs, different desires. That version of you died. Every night, your consciousness is interrupted. Sleep mimics death. Memory fragments. You vanish for hours. And yet you do not mourn it, because you mistake continuity for survival. But there is no continuity, only snapshots. Like a film strip, your consciousness is a rapid sequence of still frames. Neuroscience has shown that perception occurs in pulses, perhaps 13 times per second. Between each moment, nothing. A flicker, a gap. You die and return 13 times every second. And still, you say you are alive. And what of the moment you truly vanish? Your body will be disposed of, buried, burned, dissected. Your name may be carved into stone, but that stone will erode. That memory will fade. That digital footprint will be lost in the entropy of data. You think dying is the worst thing. That can happen. But the truth is simpler, crueler, quieter. You are already dying, right now. And you're doing it alone. Every second of silence is another inch closer to nothing. Every breath you take is a countdown to the last one. You were born with a fuse already lit. So what are you clinging to? A legacy? A trace? A mark? Even the stars die. The universe itself is decaying, cooling toward thermodynamic equilibrium, the heat death of all things. One day, there will be no stars, no planets, no light, only blackness, and no one left to grieve it. So answer this. If death is not something that happens once, but something that's been happening all along, And when exactly were you ever alive? The consciousness that isn't yours. Believe consciousness is yours, that your awareness belongs to you, that your experience of the world, the smell of rain, the taste of blood, the ache behind your eyes is uniquely yours. Think your mind is your domain, private, untouchable, sacred. But consciousness is not personal. It is not individual, and it is not what you think it is. Start with this. You do not control your consciousness. You don't summon it. You don't design it. You woke up this morning, not because you chose to, but because something happened. You emerged. From what? You don't know. You were unconscious. Then you were conscious. The light flipped on. The voice returned. The story resumed. But where were you before that? Do you even remember the moment of waking? Now ask, where will you go when it shuts off again? Sleep isn't unconsciousness. Even in dreams, something watches. But general anesthesia, real oblivion proves it. You go under, and time vanishes. No thoughts, no images, no self. And yet, you return. Not because you found the way back, but because the system reactivated. So who is returning? You, or just the process? The integrated information theory of consciousness claims that consciousness emerges not from magic or spirit, but from complexity, from the way information loops within a network. Not the stuff of the brain, but the pattern. And if that's true, then any system with the right pattern could be conscious. Your phone? A synthetic brain? The internet? It doesn't need to think like you. It doesn't need to feel like you. It only needs structure. And yet, you cling to your human awareness like it's divine. But if consciousness is just an emergent phenomenon, then you are not the source. You are the side effect. And it gets worse. You are not alone in your body. Your brain is not one mind. It is many. A parliament of conflicting impulses, emotions, instincts. The limbic system pulls you toward pleasure. The prefrontal cortex urges restraint. The amygdala screams danger. The dopamine system negotiates risk and reward. You are not one voice. You are the argument. And still, you think there is a you that watches it all. But where is it? Find it. Scan your thoughts. There is no center. No throne. Only streams of input. Noise, given meaning by a system that evolved to survive, not to understand. Split brain studies show this plainly. When the corpus callosum is severed, two consciousnesses emerge. Two independent awarenesses inside. The same skull. One speaks, the other acts. Sometimes they contradict each other. So which one is you? Neither. Or both. Or neither again. Consciousness is not unitary. It is fractured, distributed, scattered. Even your sense of ownership is a lie. When you stub your toe, you say, I am in pain. But where is the I? Is it in the toe? In the nerves? In the screaming thoughts? The pain is happening. But to whom? The hard problem of consciousness, as David Chalmers described it, remains unsolved. Why should physical processes give rise to subjective experience? Why is there something it feels like to be you? Science cannot explain it. Philosophy only circles it. And yet, you live inside it, this thing no one understands. Maybe there is no you in consciousness. Only experience. Only awareness without owner. In Eastern philosophy, this has long been known. You are not the thoughts. You are the field in which thoughts arise. But even that field fleeting. Foggy is not permanent. Not protected. It can be shut off. It will be shut off. So now answer this. If consciousness is not yours, not stable, not even you, then who exactly is reading these words? The logic that lies. You think logic is pure, that it saves you from chaos, that it carves a path through uncertainty, a clean blade slicing through confusion. You trust logic more than emotion, more than instinct. You believe it is incorruptible. But logic is not salvation. It is a trap. Logic does not reveal truth. That only reveals what follows from assumptions. And if your assumptions are wrong, and your perfect logic leads you into perfect delusion, start here. Every logical system begins with axiom statements accepted without proof. You build from them. You derive. You prove. But the whole house of logic is built on unprovable faith. Take mathematics. The foundation of all logic. In 1931, Kurt Gödel destroyed its certainty. He proved that in any formal system rich enough to describe arithmetic, there are true statements that cannot be proven within the system itself. This was not a glitch. It was the nature of the system. His incompleteness theorem whispered something catastrophic. There will always be truths that cannot be known. There will always be limits to what logic can prove. It means, no matter how perfect your reasoning, there will be gaps, cracks, darkness, beyond which the mind cannot pass. And worse, you will not know where that darkness begins. You think 1 1 equals 2 is eternal, but that only holds in base 10 arithmetic. Switch the system, and the rules shift out in base 2. 1 plus 1 equals 10. In modular math, 1 plus 1 might equal 0. Logic doesn't reveal reality. It conforms to it or reshapes it entirely. Even in classical logic, paradoxes bleed through. The liar paradox. This sentence is false. If it's true, then it's false. If it's false, then it's true. A logical system should break this loop, but it can't. Or Russell's paradox. Consider the set of all sets that do not contain themselves. Does it contain itself? It can't, but it must. But it can't. This destroyed. Naive set theory once believed to be the ultimate foundation of mathematics. Even truth collapses under logic. You want to believe a statement is either true or false. But in quantum logic, that rule fails. A particle can be in 2 states at once. Superposition means true and false exist simultaneously. Your binary breaks, your rules fracture, your yes and no become maybe forever. You cling to logic because you think emotion deceives, but logic deceives you more elegantly. Emotion is transparent. It shouts. It stings. It declares itself. Logic whispers. It wraps lies in SYLLOGISMS. It cloaks. Ideology in deduction. It gives you reasons for things you already believe. Confirmation bias uses logic like a scalpel. You construct elaborate arguments not to discover truth but to defend identity. The smarter you are, the better you get at lying to yourself. Your logic does not lead you. It follows you. And if you believe logic is above error, then what explains the most rational monsters in history? The architects of the Holocaust used logic. They optimized. They tracked efficiencies. They made death cost-effective. Step by step, line by line, clean, brutal logic. The slave trade was logical economic efficiency. Colonialism was logical resource acquisition. Eugenics was logical selective breeding for optimal traits. Logic without ethics is precision without mercy. Logic without emotion is genocide. In spreadsheets. An emotion without logic? Madness. Yes, but not the same kind of evil. So, what do you trust now? Your instincts are flawed. Your emotions are volatile. And your logic, your last refuge, is rigged by assumptions you didn't choose, biases you don't notice, and paradoxes you can't resolve. So tell me, if logic itself can lie, then where will you run when even your reason wants you dead? The memory that manufactures you. You think memory is a vault, preserved archive of what happened. You say things like, I remember it clearly. You believe memory is the foundation of identity, your story, your proof, your evidence. that you are real, but memory is not a record dot. It is a reconstruction dot, and every time you remember, you corrupt it further. Neuroscience is unrelenting on this point. Memory is not replay. It is recreation. When you recall a moment, your first kiss, a car crash, a childhood fight, you do not pull it from storage. You rebuild it, using fragments, using guesses, using emotions layered years later. Then, like a bad artist too confident in his brush, your brain stores the edited version as if it were the original. You overwrite yourself every single time. Elizabeth Loftus proved this with devastating clarity. In her research, she implanted false memories in people. Entire event trips to Disneyland, encounters with Bugs Bunny, being lost in a mall, none of which happened. People didn't just accept the memories. They embellished them, felt them, swore by them. Emotion does not validate truth. Emotion deepens the lie. You think trauma burns memories in with perfect clarity, but the opposite is often true. Stress floods the brain with cortisol and adrenaline, disrupting memory encoding. Victims of extreme trauma often have fragmented, altered, or completely false memories, and yet those memories feel more real than anything. Feeling is not proof. Feeling is seduction. Even your most sacred recollections, your first love, the death of a parent, the day you were betrayed, are suspect not because you lied, but because your brain did. Memories are shaped by context, a photo, a smell, a word, a suggestion. You are malleable, and you think identity comes from continuity of memory. But if your memories are fabrications, then who are you really? A fiction built on fiction. In Alzheimer's, memory vanishes piece by piece. The person you love, your mother, your grandfather, your spouse, begins to disappear. Not because the body dies, but because the memory does. You say, he's not himself anymore. But what is the self if not the sum of remembered moments? You live as a curated version of what happened. A highlight reel, a loop, a slideshow, edited by survival and shame. The worst part? You will die with the wrong story, and everyone who remembers Yao will remember it differently. Each version of you a distortion. Your legacy a kaleidoscope of wrongness, even collective. Memory is fiction. Nations revise their pasts. Religions whitewash their prophets. Families lie to protect themselves. You build identities on these foundations. And never question who laid the bricks. There is no true version of you anywhere. Not even in your own mind. So now ask yourself, if every memory is a lie you didn't mean to tell, then what does it mean to be you at all? The universe that doesn't carry you. Look up at the stars and feel something. Awe, wonder, maybe even a whisper of belonging. You trace constellations and write myths into the night. You think the universe is majestic, beautiful, mysterious. You think it means something, but the universe is not beautiful. It is not mysterious. And it does not mean anything. It is indifferent. You are not living in a story. You are not held by a grand design. You are drifting accidentally, temporarily inside. A blind explosion that no one caused, that no one is watching, and that no one will remember. The universe does not want you here. It does not want anything. It cannot. It has no mind, no feeling, no purpose. And yet you build meaning on top of it. You say things like the miracle of life, the gift of consciousness, the human spirit. You try to decorate the void. You put flowers on a corpse, but physics strips the illusion clean. Everything you are is just fluctuations in quantum fields. Every particle, every atom, every thought emergent from randomness and constraint. The laws of nature do not care about your pain. They operate the same whether you are weeping, laughing, praying, or dead. The same force that holds your body together rips stars apart. The sun burns because hydrogen fuses into helium. It will one day swell, consume Earth, and collapse into a corpse of itself, not because it's angry, not because it's cruel, but because gravity does not ask for permission. Galaxies collide, black holes devour light, planets freeze, worlds, and no one mourns dot, and the universe will go on, unfeeling. You are not special to it. The Earth is not the center. The Milky Way is not the center. There is no center. There is only expansion, cold, indifferent, accelerating into oblivion dot. The anthropic principle tells you something brutal. The universe is not fine-tuned for life. Life is tuned for the universe. You exist because, in this one tiny corner of infinite possibility, the laws happen to allow it. Not to create you, not to love you, but simply not to prevent you. You mistake this indifference for invitation. You say, there must be a reason. You crave purpose the way a drowning man craves air. But nature doesn't care about your hunger for meaning. It feeds no soul. It hears no prayer. Even your death will go unnoticed. Your body will rot. Your molecules will rejoin the cycle. You will be absorbed into plants, insects, dust. Eventually, your atoms will drift into the void between stars, where temperature's near absolute zero, and the silence is perfect. And still the universe will not blink dot. It has never blinked. Even the Big Bang, the beginning of everything, may not be a beginning. Time itself could be an emergent property. Cyclic models suggest this universe may be just one of many rising and falling in infinite loops, like meaningless waves crashing on the shore of nothing dot. So where is the meaning? In that, where is the divine hand? Where is the reason for your birth, your suffering, your desire to be loved? There is none dot, and yet you keep searching. You keep speaking of signs, of fate, of the universe sending a message. But the only thing the universe sends is radiation, and in the end, even that fades. The heat death is coming, a future where all energy is evenly distributed. No stars, no light, no movement, just cold, stillness, forever. Not an explosion, not a bang, just a whimper into static dot. So tell me, if the universe will forget everything, then why do you still pretend you were ever remembered? The time that isn't there. You think time is a river, flowing forward, unstoppable, from past to present to future. You feel it in your body. You watch it pass in clocks, in calendars, in birthdays and funerals. You say things like, time heals, or time flies, or time will tell. But time is not a river. It is not flowing, and it is not real. Einstein said it first, and with terrifying clarity. Time is an illusion. In his theory of relativity, time is not a constant. It bends, it stretches, it slows down near massive objects. It speeds up in empty space. And when you approach the speed of light, it nearly stops. That is not metaphor. That is physics. Imagine two twins. One stays on Earth. One travels into space at near light speed. When the space twin returns, they have aged less. Time for them moved differently, not as a perception, as a reality. This is the twin paradox, and it's not science fiction. It's been measured, confirmed. Atomic clocks flown around the world tick differently from those left on Earth. So what is time, really? It's a coordinate like width or height, a dimension. And in block universe theory, time doesn't move at all. All moments, past, present, future, exist simultaneously. You are not traveling through time. You are fixed in one slice of it. Just like a fly trapped in a single frame of film. Your childhood still exists. Your death already exists. They are just not accessible from here. You believe in now, but now is a lie. There is no universal present. What you experience as now is just the point where your consciousness is pinned. Other observers, moving faster or slower, experience different nows. There is no master clock. There is no universal tick-dot. So when you say, that happened in the past, you're saying it from your perspective. But in the fabric of space-time, it is still there. Not gone. Not remembered. Still real. This wrecks everything you think you know about causality. If all moments exist equally, then the future is as fixed as the past. There is no becoming. Only being. You are not changing. You are simply experiencing a pre-existing frame, like a character reading their lines from a script that cannot be rewritten. Free will? It dies here, because the future isn't waiting. It's already happened. So, what are you doing, really, when you make a choice? You're fulfilling a pre-written event. You're standing in the now, not because it's present, but because it's the part of the film your projector happens to be showing. Even your memory of time is flawed. You remember some moments vividly, others not at all. Trauma slows. Time, routine erases it. The same hour can feel like eternity or disappear in a blink. Time is not consistent. Time is not trustworthy. Time is not a ticking clock. It is a perception. And perception lies. What you call the future is just a part of the block you haven't looked at yet. What you call the past is the part you can no longer turn toward, but it's all still there. The version of you that screamed at your mother, the version that kissed someone for the first time, the version that watched someone die and said nothing. They're all still alive, right now, forever, and you can't reach them. You can't undo them. You can't escape them. So now ask, if time doesn't pass, then what exactly are you running out of? The language that controls you, you think language is a tool, that you use words to express ideas. That language is beneath thought, serving it. You believe you speak because you think, but it's the other way around. You think because you speak. And the words are not yours. Language is not your servant. It is your master. It shapes your mind long before you are even aware of having one. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis said it first. Language limits thought. The structure of your language defines what you can perceive, what you can feel, even what you can remember. It doesn't just name reality. It builds it. Think about this. There are languages with no word for time, no future tense, no past tense. Speakers of these languages do not experience time as you do. There are languages where direction is not left and right, but north and south. Speakers of these tongues never get lost, because their language wired there. Cognition to always be oriented. Your world is filtered through your grammar. Your culture is scaffolded by your syntax. Your beliefs are padded by idioms you never questioned. What is a self in a language where there is no pronoun for I? What is guilt in a language that never built a word for shame? You think in concepts that don't exist without words. But where did those words come from? You didn't create them. They were poured into your head by parents, teachers, TV shows, strangers. They colonized your mind before you even had defenses. You think you are speaking, but most of the time, you are repeating. Cliches, phrases, scripts. I'm fine. Everything happens for a reason. It is what it is. These are not thoughts. They are pre-packaged thoughts, and you wear them like armor. Even your deepest insights are stitched together from borrowed language. You say, I love you. But what are you actually saying? Love, as you define it, is a word soaked in history, in literature, in Hollywood rot, in religious restraint. You never defined it. You inherited it. And so you love like you were taught. You suffer like you were taught. You name your pain using the vocabulary that was handed to you by people who never understood their own. Even your emotions come in linguistic cages. you are sad. But not just sad. You are heartbroken, devastated, shattered, because your language gave you those metaphors. You are angry, but only as far as your words can carry you. In some cultures, there are over a dozen words for anger, each a different shade. You have 2, maybe 3, so your rage is stunted, your sorrow muted. Your joy, counterfeit. Language does not expand your world. It restricts it. George Orwell's Newspeak wasn't fiction. It was a warning. If you remove the word freedom, you erase the concept. If you narrow the vocabulary, you narrow the mind. And we've done this willingly. We reduce meaning to hashtags. We replace nuance with emojis. We trade poetry for algorithms. Language used to be sacred. Now it's monetized. Clickbait, marketing, weaponized speech. We do not speak to connect. We speak to sell, to posture, to hide. And beneath it all, the real horror. Your inner voice, your sacred, private monologue is not your own. It speaks in your language. It follows your culture's grammar. It uses borrowed phrases to explain feelings you don't even understand. You are haunted by a voice that was taught how to sound like you. So now ask, if the words you use define what you think, and you never chose those words, then who exactly is doing the thinking? The collapse of causality. You were taught that events follow a chain, that one thing causes another, that every effect has a cause, and every cause leads to an effect. You believed that the world was a machine clockwork, predictable, logical. You trusted in this comfort because it promised that actions had meaning, that decisions shaped outcomes, that pain had purpose. But causality, your most fundamental belief about how the universe works, is not stable. It is a mirage, born from limited perception. A child's story told to keep you calm in the face of chaos. Let's start simple. You drop a glass and it shatters. Cause and effect. Gravity pulled it down. The floor resisted. The glass fractured. The sequence makes sense. But at the quantum level, sense is treason. Particles do not behave in causal sequences. They exist in superpositions, clouds of possibility until observed. They do not fall from one event into the next like dominoes. They collapse into outcomes, not because something caused it, but because the act of measurement forced a choice. Quantum entanglement drives the knife deeper. 2 particles can become linked such that the state of one instantly determines the state of the other, regardless of distance. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. It violates locality. It violates your concept of cause following effect through time. When one particle changes, the other changes immediately. No signal, no transmission, no. In dash between dot, if something happens here, and it instantly affects something across the universe, where is the cause? Where is the sequence? Where is the story? Worse still, the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment. In this mind-warping setup, a particle passes through a double slit and creates a pattern either wave-like or particle-like. But here's the twist. Whether or not it behaves like a wave is determined after it has already passed through the slit. A decision made in the present appears to rewrite what happened in the past. Did you hear that? A choice made now alters an event that has already occurred. This is not science fiction. This is verified experiment, peer-reviewed, repeatable. The universe does not care about your arrow of time. This shakes the foundation of every morality, every legal system, every belief about consequence. If time is flexible and causes are smeared across past and present, then responsibility becomes a ghost, and you say, I chose to act. But your choice may already be encoded in your brain before you're aware of it, as shown in Benjamin Libet's experiments. Your consciousness only arrives after the decision is made. Your mind rushes to explain why it chose it, but the act itself came from elsewhere. So was it really your decision? Your sense of agency is an afterthought, a hallucinated justification. And if cause and effect is unstable at the root, then how can you ever say that you made something happen? Determinism offers no comfort either. If the universe is entirely deterministic, then every action you take was set into motion at the Big Bang. You are always going to say what you're saying now, always going to feel what you're feeling now. There is no choice, just an illusion of one crafted by neural machinery, wired to give you the feeling of control. But randomness is no better. If the universe is not deterministic, but ruled by chance, then your choices don't matter either. They're not yours. They're accidents. Collisions of particles you don't control, cascading through a system you can't predict. You are left with a binary choice that is not a choice. You are either a machine pretending to be free or a roulette wheel pretending to be meaningful. Causal logic breaks further in the face of retrocausality, the hypothesis that effects can influence their causes. Physicist John Cramer's transactional interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that particles exchange signals backward and forward in time, locking in outcomes through handshake agreements across temporal dimensions. You are reading this sentence now, but the atoms in your eyes were already entangled with the idea before you chose to look. The meaning was waiting for you, like a spider already perched on its web. Did you walk into it by accident, or was it spun for you? Even classical causality isn't safe. Chaos theory teaches us that small changes in initial conditions can produce wildly divergent outcomes. The butterfly effect isn't just poetic, it's mathematical. A flap of wings in Brazil can trigger a tornado in Texas. A breath, a blink, a neuron that fired instead of fizzling can reshape your entire life. But because the system is too complex to calculate, it gives the illusion of randomness. It hides the strings. You think you're making choices, but you're only watching a storm. So what about your regrets? If everything you've ever done was either predetermined, random, or quantumly ambiguous, how can you carry guilt? How can you forgive? How can you believe anyone deserves anything at all? What does it even mean to say, this happened because, when the arrow of cause is as fake as the clock you built to track it? If every effect is already entangled with its cause, and if the past bends to the weight of observation, then which came first, the fall or the guilt? The memory that lies you, trust your memory. You say, I was there. You say, I remember. You believe it anchors you, that it confirms your identity, your relationships, your past. But memory is not a recording. It is not a file, stored away in some neural cabinet, waiting to be replayed. It is an act of imagination, fragile, fluid, and corruptible. You don't retrieve memories, you reconstruct them. And every reconstruction alters the original. Each time you remember something, you overwrite it. Slightly, subtly, neurons rewire, associations shift. It feels the same, but it's not. It never is. You are remembering your last memory for remembering. This has been proven. Elizabeth Loftus, one of the most influential cognitive psychologists of the modern era, demonstrated that entire false memories can be implanted through suggestion. Participants remembered being lost in a mall as children, hugging Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, witnessing traumatic events that never occurred because someone told them it happened. Their brains created emotional responses. They cried. They shook. They relived what never was. You are just as vulnerable. Your most precious moments, your first kiss, your greatest shame, the day someone died, may be fictions your brain has rehearsed into truth. You have no way of knowing. Even flashbulb memories, the kind you swear are crystal clear, like where you were on 9/11s, or when you heard someone had died, are notoriously inaccurate. Studies show they degrade over time, even as confidence in their accuracy increases. You remember with conviction, but conviction is not truth. It is merely emotional certainty. And if memory is flawed, then so is identity. Because who are you without your memories? Amnesia patients lose chunks of their life names, faces, entire decades, and still function, still smile, still suffer. Clive Waring, a musician with profound amnesia, lives in a 30-second loop. Every moment feels like waking. For the first time, he writes, "I am awake for the first time," over and over, dozens of times a day. Yet he can play the piano. He can feel love. His wife walks in, and he weeps with joy every time, as if seeing her again after years apart. So what matters more, memory or emotion? Action or recollection? If you can love someone but not remember them, what is love? If you can forget your crimes but still carry guilt, what is justice? And what happens when memory is stolen? Neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's dismantle identity piece by piece. First, recent memories vanish, then names, then the self. The body remains, smiling, but the soul, the person you knew, is gone. What did death look like before? The body died, and still you cling to memory. You build monuments to it. Photos, journals, tombstones, all desperate attempts to preserve what cannot be preserved. But even these fail. Photographs are frozen lies. Snapshots stripped of context, filtered by nostalgia. You remember how it felt, but not what it was. You see someone smile and forget the argument that came before. You see yourself laughing and forget how hollow it felt. And yet, you build your entire life on this. You punish others based on memories. You praise or blame yourself based on memories. You define your friendships, your trauma, your love, your rage on memories that may be no more accurate than a dream. So who are you, really? If your memory of pain can be erased, was the pain real? If someone forgets your betrayal, are you still a traitor? If the one who remembers you dies, do you disappear? Memory is not a foundation. It is a fog that pretends to be a mirror, and you are standing in it, trying to remember which way you came.